Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Keeping Up with Papa, Life After Work, where we find out how one man manages to keep himself busy, physically active, and mentally engaged after retirement with projects. Today's project, well, a neighbor would like to have his deck expanded. And in the process of preparing for that, we discovered that, well, there are a few major issues that need to be addressed first. Check it out. When and this he's gone, and now he's dead. Quite a bit, tinkering and adjusting. I have first. Welcome back, and a little backstory for you. Well, a neighbor would like to see this deck up top moved out about 4 feet so he'll have more room up top for deck activities. Then after that, he'd like to add a second deck at about this level, going out about 10 feet. Well, adding the second deck is no big deal, and honestly, doing this is really no big deal. But the problem that we ran into is that this corner, there was a set of stairs going down over here, which we've had to remove, and this entire corner is cantilevered. It's not supported here at all, which is just makes absolutely no sense from a design standpoint. I mean, I understand the concept of cantilevering. This was overkill. It simply didn't work. As a result, this whole corner has dropped way down over the past 15 or so years. Now we can take this jack this post up about 2 inches, maybe a little bit more, before we become level on this plane and on this plane. And so, at the moment, we have temporary support post here on the jack and a temporary support post here on these boards. This is an issue that has to be addressed first before we move on to part 2. We had a little weather this morning, and that's past now, so change it to my work clothes, time to get serious. One of the first things that you really need to do when you're doing a project as sophisticated or complicated as this is you got to plan your work a little bit. Now you can get really sophisticated about it and get some graph paper and sketch everything out to scale. I don't typically do that. I just do something like this. It was kind of ugly initially. It's a little bit less ugly now on the second round, and it's sufficient for me to plan what I need to plan at this particular stage, which is I need to figure out how many posts and how long each post needs to be, and then I need to go and purchase those posts. That's the first thing that has to go in the ground. I'll also need to go and get some bags of concrete. The first decision I need to make is where to put all of these posts. Well, normally, if I had been building this from scratch, I probably would have put a post right here, straight down. Now, this joist on this outside edge is called a rim joist, and it runs from the wall all the way to this corner right here. And that whole run is about 14 feet. I measured it. You can typically run the 2x12, which is what this is, up to about 18 feet without having to support it. So I'm well within that parameter, so I don't really need a post here. But I absolutely believe that I need a post on this corner to help hold this one corner up. The odd part about it is there's another corner right there which will need a second post. Here's a better view of it. I've got a corner here and a corner here. Now, I definitely need to support this long run. This one's not so much necessary, with the exception of the fact that we're going to run out 4 more feet. So I really could probably not put another post here, because I will have a post about 4 feet out, and that's sufficient to hold this rim joist, which will be, I'll have a second one sistered onto the face of this and headed out from there. All that said, I'm not happy with it not being there, and it's not particularly expensive. So I probably will go ahead and put a post in this corner and then another post out there. We'll see. Decision made. Post will go here and the post will go here. This first hose has a corner terminal post on the deck up top, just bolted on here. I'm going to butt this one up to there, drop it down, put it in concrete, and then I'm going to use a piece of lap mending material from Simpson and tie the two together to make sure it's extra strong. There will be a bolt, as I may have mentioned, going right through here as well. I'm only able to get down about a foot here before I'm hitting big roots off this oak tree. But yesterday I took this post and used that along with level and came up with an exact location for this post, which is essentially right about there. So we'll pour in a little concrete, we'll dry set these, and then we'll drop this in, fill it in. I just got to cut it to the correct length before we start doing all the concrete work. Post needs to be 85 1/4. I have a little bit of slack in that. Really should be wearing eye protection. My glasses are in the tractor. I need to run get it. Well, that is pretty much perfect. Alright, it fits nicely, except I just realized I made one critical mistake. I need to jack this back up and get it into proper position for height before I measure and cut this. Well, if it's not too far, I'll just add a little bit of dirt in and some concrete underneath it, and then let it set from there. If it is too far, I guess I'll get another post and use this one somewhere else. That's pretty much perfect. Let's try this line. The angle needs to go up just a little bit more. Yeah, I have to raise it up quite a bit. That's over 2 inches. No, I'm going to cut another one. There's plenty of opportunity to use this. So this is interesting. This one, which is my baseline, I could still be up on this corner. This one needs to drop, and this one, that one needs to drop. So I need to go up that way and down this way. So the trick really is finding a happy medium at this point somewhere in the middle. I think it's pretty much where I am. So I'm going to recut that post, and I'm going to drop a little dry concrete in there first and cut the post a tiny bit short so that I can get a little bit of concrete underneath it, not a whole lot. And then fit it into place and then keep the pressure off the post overnight so that concrete can set. And I will also go ahead and set up this corner post as well. One trick I like to do when setting a post in concrete is drive in a few screws, one on each side basically, so that when the concrete sets, the post can't twist. Fingers crossed that this one fits. Actually, that's not too bad. Got a tiny, well, I really had no slack at all. That's great, nice and snug in the corner. Well, let's get a little bit of concrete in there and start working on our height. Get it exactly where we want it. Okay, we're snug up on the top this way. Need to get a hammer or a sledge. So I'm really close to going in. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be so tight I couldn't quite get it to fit. That way I can give it a pop or two off the jack, and then it'll go. Then I'll pour my concrete, let this set in place, get it all nice and plumb, and then tomorrow I'll come back and lower this down so I don't overly compress the concrete or what's underneath the concrete. Perfect. Let's get this plumb. So everything's exactly where it should be. I'm going to run in a set screw just to hold it in place so I don't lose it. Now, no one like me can accidentally bump it and move it. Perfect. Concrete time. Just a fairly light coating of water. It's not critical. This is not cosmetic like it would be on a slab. It'll eventually be covered by dirt and wood chips. So, soak it once, give it about 10 minutes, come back and do it again. Maybe give it another 10 minutes and do it a third time, and by this time tomorrow it'll be absolutely, completely cured. This is a terminal post up on that corner. That has to stay. Normally I would put my post right up against this intersection right here. I can't do that, so I'll end up putting the post here. Getting a little creative, and it will be notched so that this sits on the notched portion of the post. Our notch is cut at the top. We're resting nice and snug up against this. This board is bent out, that's why it's not completely flush. Then at the bottom I have a layer of concrete underneath, and then I have wet it and made sure it was nice and snug down at the very base, and it is. So now I simply have to fill in concrete around the edges, wet it, let it dry. Both of the new posts are now in place and in concrete. The concrete is watered in. Tomorrow, about 24 hours later, we'll remove this one support post and they'll be self-sustaining at that point. When we lifted up the corner, we created a big gap between these joists and this support joist here. So we'll be using these shims, these plastic shims, which are essentially permanent, to fill that gap. Tomorrow, deconstruction begins. About 8 feet of this corner of the deck comes off. So we'll disassemble that, and honestly, I think we'll probably just take the flooring off and then get a circular saw and a sawzall and cut these joists off, and then rejoin them together with a rim joist on the outside, which will run the full length of the deck from the wall over there to the extra 4 feet, which will be behind me. This post will do a very good job of supporting this corner when we cut this other deck off. And once we determine exactly where that extra 4 feet ends, we'll add a post on the corner near where I'm standing, and a post on the new corner over there, and then the appropriate rim joist to finish out the framing. So next morning, and the railing is now down and access up top is via ladder. We're now making decisions about how to move certain things around on the deck itself in preparation for the extension. This removal was pretty simple, just done with a battery-powered sawzall, cutting the nails that were holding everything together. The extension portion here will be another 4 feet out past where this currently ends. And there's a little deck area built up on top of the deck area to get you a little extra height for seating, which is a really nice idea. Question now becomes exactly how do we deal with this perch area? Since the end section is going away, we need to make a new end to this existing deck. And where the deck currently ends, there's what would be a seam. So all these boards have to come up so we don't have an unsightly seam to add on a 4-foot section. Not all that complicated, with the exception that all of this perch area is nailed down. All that's got to come up. Progress has been made. The deck up top that needed to come off, the extra bit, is gone, and now it is residing down here on the ground. Cleanup time. One thing I should probably mention is this is not a one-man project. There's a gentleman that works for the neighbor a couple of days a week, and he's got a lot of skills when it comes to building things like this. So the project kind of landed in my lap, but he and I together are doing the work, and we're using each other as a sounding board on design ideas. So having someone else to help out like that is really very helpful. This is not going to be just a 3-day project, probably more along the lines of about 3 weeks. I have other things that I'm committed to do. Jeff has other things he's committed to do, and we'll fit it in as we have time, but we'll get it done just as quickly as we possibly can. When doing reconstruction like this, it's interesting how everything you do has an effect somewhere else. Here, I had this laid out perfectly, but I realized that this corner was a little bit low. So I jacked it up. I used some of those nice plastic shims, and I'm putting in a mending plate, which will be, by the way, completely screwed in. Right now it's just setting in place, and possibly a shorter one over on this side. When I jacked that up, this corner over here went up as well. And for a while I was thinking, my gosh, now I have to get that down lower. But I don't think that I do, because we have a split in this long rim joist right here, and it had previously dropped down before we even removed those bolts that were there. So when I jack this back up, it will level this whole thing out so that that corner over there is nice and straight. Cause and effect.
Yeah, oh, that did work.
All right, you'll just have to eyeball it. Then.
Yeah, I'll eyeball it when you're ready.
Jesus. I'm gonna have to step up one. And
Got your gun?
go ahead and get the gun ready. Ready?
Yep. Slide it down 1/4 inch. Oh, too much. All right, drive it home. Drive it home right there. All right.
Yeah, actually that's going to work pretty well. It's
Now we can take the jack the center up.
exactly my thought. Board, they're still not straight, but they're much better.
Yeah, it does look much better though.
And it actually needs to go down on your corner now, maybe 3/8 of an inch. All right, we're great there. This board, we're close enough.
And level.
Yeah, and the problem is it's got a little crown to it, and that's why it's not showing perfectly level. In fact, we'll go ahead and put in 2 screws, 2 screws, 2 screws, and then the bolt.
2 light bolts.
And then it can't drop, because this board will be doing all the work. Make sense?
Absolutely. See if you can't poke. Yeah, that tractor, man, that'd come in handy.
Yeah.
That should be fine.
Oh yeah.
Can you roll forward a little more?
Say,
Come
yeah.
forward?
Sure, absolutely.
About 4 or 5 inches, I think would be perfect.
Say when.
Yeah.
hide.
Yeah, but it'll tweak. All right, I'll move the tractor.
It's done its job. Look at that.
Boom! On the mark! Measure twice, cut once.
That on the board anyway. So.
Yeah, let's get it on the ledge. We can get it up on the ledge.
Will that work?
Yeah, that's
Okay. Kind of easy. All right, you let me get it.
Oh, top heavy.
32 inches plus 3/4, so 32 3/4 plus it's coming at you. That right there is 32, so it's got to be higher by about 4 inches. So if we fill the hole with 4 inches of concrete and sit on top of it. So post number 1 is in place. We basically dug the hole based on lining it up in this corner and dropping it down. It is not going to be attached up here until tomorrow sometime after the concrete that we put in here has set. The reason for that is it's actually a little bit lower than it needs to be. So once the concrete is set, we'll put the jack on it, raise it up, get it in the right spot, and then bolt everything together. This one is next. Our target for our hole initially was off by a couple inches, which seems to happen a lot. Perfect. Take a look, that looks good. Get a little cleanup, and it looks really good now. Jeez, that's flawless. All right, so let's see how we are on height.
Not enough.
Definitely not enough.
No. About a foot short.
Yeah, 30. So we'd like to have about 34 inches. These posts are only going to be 30 inches tall. It's a little bit different from what code requires, but it's what's already up there. We need to match it. So you need about 34 inches above this point right here. So we'll be picking this up, putting concrete underneath it to make up that difference. What do you think?
I think we're right there.
Dead on. Grab the handy dandy chopper tool. Yeah. Good morning's work. Kind of stuck now because we need to let concrete dry before we can jack this back up and put it in exactly the location it needs to be as far as height goes. When that's done, I'll be back making stringers to fill in this hole. I've got to go get joist hangers for there and joist hangers for this area. Finish this one off, and then after that we will be laying down decking, making good progress. Because this one rim joist was split here in the middle, we were forced to get a little creative and add a second board on the outside to give it the appropriate amount of structural strength. And it now looks like this. Had to do a little bit of work with the jack to raise it up and get everything level. Worked out really well. Okay, everything is leveled out now. Turned out pretty good. Something I've noticed that's done on this deck that's not done on other decks that I had built in the past is that, well, actually on the decks over here behind me, is they don't use bolts on these posts. They've just used nails to hold these 2x12s in place. Again, back over here behind me. Not something I'm really completely comfortable with. So we harvested some bolts out of this when we were tearing it down, and I'm putting them back here, at least 2 on each of these end pieces, just for a little bit of extra structural security. Oh, that's perfect.
Hold on a minute. Hold on.
Okay.
Gotta line it up. Measure twice, cut once, right?
Yep. Yeah. A friend of mine was an engineer. It's an engineering joke back in college. They would say, engineers will measure it with a micrometer, mark it with a piece of chalk, and then cut it with an axe.
Yeah. That kind of sounds like opposite of what you're supposed to do.
While we're wrapping up the last of the stringers, we've been laying out also the rough outline of the second deck. And at the moment, we're thinking of doing sort of an octagon, which this is what you'll see. This tree is a limiting factor, so we can't go and take that tree out. So what we may do for stairs to come down, and again, we're just working our way through this and thinking, is put it here off to one side, have one step down, and then the stairs will come down and hit this deck. The thing is that, Jeff, put your finger roughly where my mark is, up a foot. Yeah, that's it. Right about there is the top of the deck. So it's going to still be, geez, that's where I'm standing right now. That's 5 feet out here.
That's your height right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So out here behind us, it'll be 6 feet above the ground. A lot of thinking. Everything is done down underneath, and we have started laying decking boards up top. And of course, we run into the wonderful challenge of notching boards around these corners. This one will require a small piece on that corner. This end of that same board requires a 3-way cut. It's doable. Not fun, but I think I can make a pattern and make it work. The next thing I had to do was to notch a board around these 2 posts. Naturally, it occurred on both ends at the same time. So what I did was create a pattern. I took a piece of scrap board and cut a pattern for end A, and then scrap board and cut a pattern for end B. And then I traced those out onto the long board at the proper dimensions. Came up a little bit long the first time intentionally when I cut it, and then cut out about 3/8 of an inch more, and it dropped right into place. Here's what it looks like. Here's end A, notched right into place, fits perfect, a little tiny bit tight. As it shrinks, that will stop. Going down to end B. Same thing, really fits well. Process works great. This whole thing, however, took about an hour. The same process will need to be repeated for this next board, and we'll have to cut little end pieces to tack on here so everything matches. So hopefully it won't take nearly as long this time. I'm using 16-foot boards, and I'm getting to the point where they're progressively shorter now, and I have to think about cutting off the ends over there and using the drop over here. So the existing boards still left on the deck have almost a 1/2 inch gap between them. The new boards I'm putting in using a 1/4 inch spacer, figuring that they will shrink by about a 1/4 inch. And that'll get me pretty much the same gap I have on the other ones. I'm just a few inches shy of being able to take the cut off, the drop from this board, and place it right here. So I'm going to have to do one more. And then I'll cut this one off and use it in the next spot. These edges and that edge will snap a line, cut the whole thing off at one time. Also, I'm only putting in 3 or 4 screws at a time. That way, if I have to move something later, I can easily take a board up. The only thing I'm going to have to actually do is we'll have to put a post right here and a post in the middle over here, which means probably just cutting the boards out and dropping the post in and bolting it to this rim joist. So I've confirmed that I can use my drop without a problem at all for the rest of this. What I'd like to do is go ahead and cut these off. I'm going to have an overhang of maybe 2 inches when I'm completely done. For the moment, I'm going to cut it off about 4 inches out, leave a little bit, and then come back and finish the actual dress cut later. Maybe now I won't step on that and fall off. Be like a diving board. More progress being made. Time to try and figure out how to lay out the octagon for the lower deck. Well, I do have at least part of it figured out, and that's how to get the post set for the downhill portion of the octagon we're building. So how exactly do you figure out where to put your post? Well, it is the magic of strings again. So what I've done is I run a string from the fur of this post down there up against the house, right along the edge of the second post, and then I've come out here and given myself a nice straight line for the edge of where this post will be that goes in the ground here. So that allows me to pick one dimension. This may not be entirely necessary, but I wanted to have one string that was completely level, because if you're drawing a number, a length from one post to another, and you're at an angle and not level, the dimension actually changes. Now, it's pretty minimal, but I'm picky about these kind of things. So I established a level string first, and in this particular case over here, I didn't have a pole at the back end, so this lighter colored string goes all the way to a stringer and then uses the edge of this post as a sight line. And then we come down to here, and that's where we put the post, or the end of the string, down here. And that gave me the edge for side B over here. I also did the same thing over here where I've got a crosshatch between 2 strings, and I plumbed the post based off of that. Checked my numbers later, and everything was absolutely perfect. The challenge will be where to locate the posts that are on the sides that create the actual octagon. I'm not 100% certain how I'm going to do that. It'll be a fair amount of ciphering and just playing around with angles. But I have a pretty good idea, I think, how to go about it. This morning we finished lining up all the strings and created an intersection that occurs right here and over there, and then dug the holes, which was not a lot of fun because there were roots in the way, and then dropped the corners in right in here so that they matched here at this intersection point. And that actually worked really well. I now have 2 posts installed, so I can take down my frames and move those over to the other side, start the same process over there. Looks good. After having figured out how to do the angles for the octagon on this side, I use exactly the same process over here to set these poles. It really was much simpler round two, now that I had an idea of what I was doing. An interesting skill to acquire, one I will probably never use again. Railing is the last thing to be done here, so with safety in mind, I'm putting up a rope temporarily just to give something visual to show the edge of the deck along with the actual boards down there themselves. It's a long fall if you take a bad step. The first two rim joists are in place. These are the critical ones. These set the height for everything else down the pipeline here. So the one behind me and the one you see here. So I chose the location of this one based on how far I wanted it below the upper deck. Marked that, and then I cut a small board and put it underneath it, just screwed it on real quick on each side, and then placed the board in place, shimmed it up to exactly where I wanted it, and then I marked the board for a cut. And then I took it back down and I cut the two ends so they were flush with the post on each end. And that was the first one. The second one, I did something somewhat similar, except I used these stringers and ran them across, set them, on top of this one right here. Then I found where it was perfectly level. I marked it down there. That became my high point for this second rim joist. And so I did the same thing on the other side over here with the second one, and just kind of followed the same pattern. I used these two little boards to hold it in place. I shimmed it, then I marked it, took it back down and cut it, put it back into place, and it's being held with one screw. Working really well so far. These are the difficult ones. These other ones are a lot shorter. They aren't going to weigh quite as much when they're cut. And I'll just follow the same basic pattern and work my way around to this one, and this one over here. All three sides of the left side of the octagon. I'm now starting my first cuts for the angled sides of the octagon. One end of the first board where it comes off the long runs actually gets cut at 45. The other end gets cut at 22.5. Checking on a few things here. This board I pulled out, this one is 11.5 in width. This one is 11 3/4. So being as picky as I typically am, they won't match. I want to be a little bit longer going across here, dropping down a little bit further. I don't like that. So I popped a chalk line on here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this 1/2 inch of extra board off. It's not a bad idea anyway, because it's got a lot of bark on it still. That'll make it even. Hard to get good lumber. I cut the 45 on the first end already. The 22.5 I'm going to cut after I set it up here and temporarily fit it, and then I'll put a mark on it to make sure that I cut it in exactly the right spot. Don't have to do it twice. So I'm going to get my level here. Just put a mark down to put this board in place to hold this up while I'm doing all my additional work. Got multiple marks on there. I hope I got the right one. Let's find it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Wow, this is going to be a challenge. So what I'll end up doing here is marking this and then cutting it several times until I get exactly the fit I want. Okay, let's see how well it fits and how much more I need to take off. First corner, pretty good gap there. That bothers me. I might peck away at that a little bit, but I've already cut this corner, so if I move that corner in, it'll change the location. And this location is perfect. It lines up right with the edge of the post. stringers are starting to go up. Two of us working on it. Took maybe 10 minutes to put these first 3 up. We'll be putting 3 more up, and then we'll be doing the angle cuts on the angle ends and putting those up. As previously mentioned, as you can see, I like to use these boards and set the stringers on top of them and then just kind of tap them up into place using shims. Then we run 1 screw in from the outside just to hold the board in place for the time being. Then when we're done with all of them, we'll be putting joist hangers in. Two boards left. Only problem is that Ace did not have 8 footers, and that's what I need. I'm going to have to see if I can scarf up some 8 footers somewhere, or some 10s or 12s and cut them down. Next step was blocking between the stringers. It suggested that if the stringer length is over 8 feet that you block. All of these were around 11 with the exception of the ones on the very end. So went ahead and added blocking in between the stringers. Decking time. Now I did a little bit of pre-checking and I realized that I had a dimensional issue of about 3/4 of an inch from one end of this octagon corner over here to the other one over here. And that's something that can be easily made up over the length or width, the entire width of this deck. So what I've done is I've laid everything out in advance, just kind of tacked it down with 2 screws in each board, spaced it using the spacers that I have shown you before, which are just the plastic shims I had bought earlier. And I have my spacing correct, and using scrap boards as well to kind of set it all up, I laid out the entire deck. And when I got down to this other end, sure enough, I was maybe 3/4 of an inch, not quite laying out perfectly. However, my 1.5 inch overhang on that end worked out really well. I'm amazed it actually worked. So what I've done, and this is using scrap boards, is I've laid out my first board with 1.5 inches of overhang, and then I've lightly pulled in one edge on each board so that 5, 6, maybe 7 boards in, everything is pretty much perfect. Some of these are crooked, by the way. That's why the spacing maybe looks a little awkward. But it really, really worked out well. If I need to, I can take this last end board and trim a little bit off one side to hold my 1.5 inches. I don't think I'm going to need to do that. I think by just cocking these a little bit, everything's going to work out perfectly. What happens next? I'm actually going to start in the middle, find the straightest one I can, tack that one down solid, and then move left and right, tacking down all of these boards, repositioning some of them as necessary because I have drop I need to cut off. I want to save as much drop as possible. And finish out in both directions. And I think probably in about an hour, hour and a half, I'll be done. All right, I've gone down here and just physically sighted down each of these long boards to find out which one is straight. It turns out this one is perfectly straight. So it's my baseline board for setting everything up. I then go to my next board, for example here, put my spacer in place, and if I'm off a little bit, I'll use the pry bar to spread it in one direction or the other, and this as a spacer, then lock it down and run that down to full length. I'm just going to tack it in a few spots on the way down to make sure it doesn't move. Then we'll come back later and screw down the rest of all the boards. So this one's done on that end. Let's keep going. Down here I'm a little bit too wide. Drop in there, tighten it up. All done. Spacing's perfect. Just continue to do that on every board and lock them down. Decking is down, with the exception of the 2 final edge pieces that also have to be cut out to go around the post. Everything's in place. Didn't get to use much of the drop. Only one board worked for drop, and I actually had it left over one that was that long. I just stuck it in there instead. So we cut these off. We have a lot of good pieces left over for future projects. And then we move on to stair building. Lower deck boards, 100% done. Got all my corners cut and notched in around all the posts. The edging has all been cut around at 1.5 inch overhang, and it looks good. Very pleased with the final product. Now for one of the more, somewhat challenging parts of this, figuring out how to put a post here for this deck that's going to come out for the steps. And unfortunately, the corner post needs to go right there. Be more specific, the corner of the corner post has to be right here. I'm at the base of a really nice size live oak that I don't want to mess up. So how do you put a post on all those roots? Honestly, I don't know. I've been online and looked, and there's just no good answer anywhere. What I think I'm going to do, you can see that I've dug this out quite a bit. I've taken out some root structure that was there. This root actually is not related to that tree. It's related to another nearby tree. I've cut a bunch of it out. What I think I've decided to do is I'm going to build a pad, a concrete pad, and put it there, and then mount the post on that. It's a very small area where the concrete will be. It's not going to do any damage to the tree at all. What will happen, though, over the years is these roots will continue to grow, and they'll readjust the location of the pad, but not so much that it can't be addressed at a later date. Starting to plan the first set of steps. Well, I had planned it so that I would come down off the upper deck onto a small landing, and then come down about 3 steps into this area here and tie off the edge onto this post right here. Well, it won't quite work based on what I had chosen for a rise dimension, which is going to be 7¼ inches. I'll end up short, believe it or not, and not quite get to this post. So I'm having to adjust it to about 6 inches of rise, which will then add 1 more tread and will allow me to tie the bottom of the stringer into this post. After quite a bit of tinkering and adjusting, I have the first stair stringer cut, going from the upper platform down to the lower platform. The other 2 will be patterned off of that. Those will go in tomorrow along with the treads, and we will finish out the box in the morning for the landing and the 1 post that's missing there. The footer for this post near the tree actually has worked out really well. It's kind of offset a little bit, and that's on purpose because we poured around a root down there to give it a little bit of additional strength. The post itself lined up perfectly with the strings that were in place. A nice straight post. The box has been built for the landing. I am missing 1 2x10 in the middle. I don't have any, so I've got to pick one of those up. I'll need some of those in other applications as well, so I may just get a couple of them. And the stringers for the stairs are in place and completely bolted or screwed down. All I need to do now is go get some 2x6s for the stairs and for the landing. After a lot of stops and starts, the stairways and a little step down from the upper deck is pretty much finished. I've got 2 little corrections to make on the far end over there where I messed up a cut on the boards. But I think we're about ready to go. I put up a temporary railing in case somebody walks down that needs a little assistance. And the debate now is whether or not we need to put a post and a rail on this side. It's not required by code, it's not tall enough, but it may be something we want to do just for safety's sake. I've officially moved on to building the next set of steps. What we've decided to do is to come down off of this deck up here, this lower deck, and about 4 treads down, and then have a landing right here, and then we'll take a sharp turn, a dog leg to the left, and you can kind of see where I've drawn it out on the ground, and we'll go down to the ground from there. Again, thanks to the magic of strings, I was able to get a straight line off of the deck to all 4 of these support posts that will be here. It was a little bit of a challenge because we're trying to work off of this area over here, which is an octagon, and it took a lot of finagling to really figure out how to do it. But we finally did. We've got good straight lines, and the first 2 posts are in the ground and in concrete, and I'll be dropping these into concrete shortly. There There are an endless number of smaller tales on building a deck like this. One is that I like to use these stringer straps on the bottom of stringers whenever I can. This particular case, I forgot to get them in time. They have to slip in up underneath here and then screw into this, which I cannot make it work. So instead, I'm pulling out with temporary screws, a little bit shorter, and I'm putting in 3.5-inch screws just to give myself a little bit of extra depth on the stringer board for it to hold. Also, I would normally use a joist hanger here. Honestly, it's just not really necessary in this case. It's just this one board, not a lot of weight involved, and I get 2 or 3 people up there, it's never going to cause a problem on this. Long runs, absolutely. Anything over maybe 4 or 5 feet, definitely use a joist hanger. Finally starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. First stage of the stairs from the lower deck down to the ground is completed just a few hours ago. Now there's a bit of a funny story to tell on this. I did all the math and all the calculations and all the drawings on just how far down I had to come with this and where to put this particular little landing deck. Well, when we got the landing deck all built and did the stairs, nothing fit. Turns out that, and I'm not quite sure how I did it still, but there's a calculation problem on what I did on paper and what is actually real life. And that problem was that this landing was actually up here. I was planning on having 3 or 4 steps down to it and then 3 or 4 steps down to the ground. So it turns out that what I did was somehow I miscalculated the distance from the rim joist to where I wanted this to land on the landing. I didn't miscalculate it. It's all right there on paper. It all works perfectly well. It doesn't work in reality. I'm still not quite sure why it doesn't work, but it doesn't. So what we ended up doing was something really creative, and this is Jeff's idea. We took this landing, which is already slipped in place around these posts, and we unbolted it. Dropped it down 7 inches, rebolted it back without taking anything off the post. Worked great. Wish I had video of that, and I didn't think to take it at the time, but hey, you get creative when you have to. So all that's left is stairs coming down this way, and it's essentially an exact duplicate of these 4. It'll drop it right on the ground at a perfect level, and we'll be done. Now I take that back. We won't be done. I still have to do the railing. The railing is going to be stainless steel wire, and that's something I've got to go start studying up on and get on order. I'm going to wait until I have everything built and determine exactly how much wire I need to order and how many fittings I need to order to make it work. Down to the last little section. Now, having learned a somewhat difficult lesson yesterday about exactly how to determine where stringers land in relation to their terminal post, I'm going to pre-cut one stringer here in just a moment and go ahead and just set it up, lay it out. That way I'll know exactly where my terminal post needs to go, and I'll mark those terminal post holes, go ahead and dig them, go ahead and set them in concrete, and then finish cutting my stringers and finishing up the last little section of the staircase. Let's get started. First stringer is cut. Looks like this is going to work. Here's my 7-inch mark down here. This is my rise that's involved. So this will mount roughly right here. This is very close to level. I'm going to end up having to bring this up maybe an inch and a half to get it perfectly level. Or I can cut another stringer length down and bury it. Well, I'd rather not do that, obviously. It's just a little more extra work, and it's not really necessary because all I need to do at this point is set my post, put my stringer in place, and then bring in some dirt and fill in the gaps around it. Just taper it down the hill. It'll look really good that way. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Also, with the magic of strings, I'll get a straight line between these 2 posts down to here, and I'll know where to put my post in this plane, and I'll get a measurement. Actually, I'll just use this, decide how far I want this to stick out from the post, which in this case will be maybe an inch, inch and a half. And that'll get my plane in this direction, and I'll set my 2 posts. Probably the easiest one of these I've had to do the entire time. Alright, bring the string around to this point right here till it wraps around post A and then touches up against post B, and that tells me that I need the edge of post B to be right here. After I dig the hole, I'll line it all up and get it exactly dead on. Well, looks like there's concrete down there. Knowing that was the case, I brought a shovel. Get that fella out of the way. Yeah, I'd say there's a brick. Down there. Down there. Okay. That should be good. Where the stick is. I wasn't going to do this, but today I'm working by myself, and it will just make life a little simpler if I put these cross posts in and put string on them. Strings are all set up. I have this arranged so that I have a little bit of overhang beyond the post. You can see my mark, I think, down here, and about 1.5 inches beyond the string. The stringer goes about 1.5 inches beyond the post. And the numbers all work really, really well. So post hole number 1 is dug. I'll go ahead and dig post hole number 2, and then cut my post to an approximate length, which is going to be around 5 feet just to start, and go from there. With the exception of one little minor item to be done up on the top deck, the woodwork here is done. Next thing that needs to be done is the railing. I will be spending some time on the phone with the wire railing people here shortly, getting a good understanding of how to go about doing this, and then get those materials on order. Looking forward to it. That's going to be a very interesting part of this project. One other last item is we have a lot of pavers left over from another project, so I think we'll put a small paver landing at the bottom of these steps just to dress it off a little bit. Made use of some leftover pavers or recovered pavers from another project and put a little landing at the bottom of the steps. Real happy with this. It turned out really nice. Next step, paint. I have pulled out my commercial grade paint sprayer from the storage in the shed and tested it. It actually is working. That's nice. Most often I have to kind of tap on it and beat on it to get the ball busted loose inside, but I took pretty good care of this last time to ensure that when I stored it, it wasn't going to get all sticky on the inside and bind up. Working well, and actually the spraying of the deck probably won't take more than an hour. Prep work will take longer than that. Despite my best efforts, it's painting time. So I typically use a shield like this to do my edging when the opportunity presents itself. This is a good opportunity to use that. I'll also like to get into the corners. I'll do a little puddles of paint and just kind of wet. In this case I'm using just a foam brush. Kind of wet things up and then get right in there where I don't get any overspray on anything. Let's see how it works. And I already did it. Sample here. And then after I have a nice line done, really, really fast. All of this is coming off. I'm not really worried about painting it right now. posts will stay, but all the balusters in between will be gone. This deck's been here a while, and you can see there's some damage here. We've learned over the years that if the deck's not good and dry, really nice and dry when you paint it, eventually you'll get a little bubble where there was some moisture underneath, and that's probably what happened right there. Plus there's just normal wood rot that occurs over time. One thing I've learned over the years is not to get carried away with speed. It looks like it covers really, really well, but if you don't put it on quite thick enough, you'll have to go back and do a second coat. Need to figure out why that tip is clogging up. I'm not really sure why it's doing it. I finally got completely fed up with this tip. So I pulled it out, took it over to the workbench at the house, soaked it in some mineral spirits for a few minutes, and then went at it with a wire brush and with a dental pick. It is now clean. It has been this clean since it came out of the factory. And you can't see it in this picture, but you can see right through it. So let's find out if this made a difference. Okay, that made a big difference. It's actually spraying a much nicer pattern now, and it's not clogging up in between as much. It may still. Hopefully I'm wrong and it just keeps going. This is a lot faster. There it went. Made a liar out of me. Sprayer issues. Well, I thought yesterday when I bought new paint that it would be a little thinner and it wouldn't clog the sprayer tip up. Wrong. Still clogged the sprayer tip up. And I took a minute or two and just thought my way through it and said, oh my gosh, I had loaned this out to someone and the settings for pressure had been changed on the unit. And so I jacked it up about, 2 or 3%, well, maybe 10%. And perfect. Never missed a beat. Sprays great. So just finished putting the second coat on the walking part of the deck. And we'll give that probably 3 or 4 hours to dry, and then maybe move some furniture out on it later this evening so the owner can enjoy his deck. Last little bit of detail work before we start working on the wire railing. The posts of almost all of them have been cut to the proper height, so we're ready for that. We are having a few flaws show up. For example, this one 14-foot long board seems to have split for some reason. So that's got to be replaced. I've got the replacement right here. Just for grins, I put one of the caps in place on top of a post just to see what it would look like. Looks really good. The trim boards have been painted a darker brown, as is done on all the other decks. And I think the painting for the most part is done. There will be some touch-up towards the very end. And this exceptional view is why the homeowner would prefer we build his railing using high visibility wire instead of wood balusters. Well, that's it. Another project completed. Well, almost completed. We still have to get all the wire railing completely done. As you can see behind me, we've got most of it, or at least a portion of it, done on the upper deck. The lower deck hasn't even been started yet. And quite frankly, that's a bit of a complicated process and a big time learning curve for me, and actually very interesting, so it deserves an episode all its own. Well, thanks for watching, and as usual, comments and questions and advice are welcome. Please remember to like and share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Keeping Up with Papa, Life After Work. Papa out.